We'll try that again. um, there's a technical issue there when I was attempting to go live a few minutes ago. The holder of the camera or the phone, just decided to snap, and I found myself laughing, and I couldn't repair it anyway ultimately, but I just decided that discretion was the better part of valor, and just let myself laugh for a little while, because I don't know about you, when things happen that are potentially socially embarrassing, I sometimes have a giggle at some people, and I certainly have a big laugh at myself, so that did make me laugh. But anyway, the reason that I was talking earlier, or attempting to talk earlier, is because of the news that Joe Biden has decided to step down or step away from the race. He's still the president, but he's not going to fight for re-election, and he apparently has endorsed Kamala Harris. And the reason I'm mentioning it, which is relatively unusual for me, although I do talk about leaders and leadership, I tend not to get involved in politics as such, but I had been talking about Joe Biden. And up front, I would say I've no particular feelings one way or another about Joe Biden. I don't know him. I have a reasonable understanding of US politics. I think it's important to have that understanding, because it's such an important country, and such an important country which is democratic in nature. And so, whilst not an expert, I would say that I don't really relate to Biden, and that is not to do with the policies and the politics. And I don't think I relate to Trump either much, so let's just be clear about that. And my suspicion about Biden is that he just stayed on too long, and I think something was going on behind the scenes that we probably don't know anything about, may never know anything about. But he seemed to be in a position where he was determined to continue, and I think that's a great thing. I think, one cannot but admire determination and the need to carry on. And whilst I'm neither up nor down about Biden, as I say, I don't know him. I'm not a massive fan. I don't hate him. I just observe. And observing the individual, someone who's an octogenarian, what is he, 821, I thought was doing really well. But as I and a few other people, of course, have mentioned, it's different from having an 81-year-old that's in your presence and who's a neighbour, let's say, and someone who's heading up the US. The requirements are quite different. What is expected of such an individual is quite different. And the fear for me was that Joe Biden just wasn't up to the job. And yet, I was almost convinced that he was, because so many people had supported him for so long, and maybe behind the scenes he did great things. And to be fair to him, maybe behind the scenes he has been doing great things. So my, I suppose, argument to suggest to him that he should have stepped down, and should have stepped down already, was twofold. One, I didn't think that he was ultimately the best person to be in that role, and this is for that particular party. I didn't think he could remotely have been the best that they had to offer, and he wasn't, for my money, ever particularly impressive, and he certainly wasn't impressive 4 years ago. And I think some things had been obscured, and I think that it became more apparent during the debate with Trump. And whilst people were shocked, I wasn't that shocked, because he's had these stumbles and freezes before. This was nothing new, but I think he was exposed. The timing was wrong. It could have gone okay for him, but it was just one of those days that he seems to have, and those moments that he seems to have when he just wasn't with it enough for whatever reason. And I also think that because of that, so that's part one, is I don't think he was up to the job in the first place. And I don't understand why he was there. And I don't understand why that particular party had not fielded someone else. But who knows what goes on behind the scenes? We can only guess. So that's part one. But part two was that when that happened, when he was exposed in that way, when he did look so, well, almost bemused, not with it, not on top of his game at all, then the bubble burst. Because the media, and this is the part of the media who had been quiet before, who had been supportive, they suddenly decided for whatever reason that it was fair game time. And they jumped on the bandwagon. And other people had been saying this, other commentators had been saying it for a long time, that he wasn't up to the job, and a lot of things were obfuscated, a lot of things were hidden, a lot of things were held back. And yet, for some reason, he was allowed to continue. Again, I don't know why. If that was a business and an organization that was a profit or non-profit, that's very strange. But when you then add in the fact that, Joe's not the guy who 821 would be a great and robust neighbor. He's the guy 821 who needs to get up at any hour of the morning and needs to make decisions like that, and needs to be understood, and needs to be focused, and needs to be on the ball. So either he wasn't capable of that, or other people were doing it and helping behind the scenes, which is probably the case, of course. Then, to me, that's a travesty of the position. That's not why he's meant to be there. It's not that he's not meant to have helpers, sorry about the double negative. Of course, maybe I shouldn't say helpers, assistants. It's not that. It is that he should be able to be conscious enough, awake enough, focused enough, cognizant enough, with it enough to understand the subtleties and nuances of what's going on and the ramifications of any decisions that he would make. And maybe he was able to do that. It didn't look like it to me, but maybe he was. But, and this is still in part two, where the bubble burst. Not only did the bubble burst with the media, as I've already mentioned in previous videos, the world are watching. It reduces confidence in the leadership of the US. And not everyone is friendly with the US. And when they see that, well, what are they starting to think or wonder or conjecture or plan? Who knows? So ultimately, when that media turned on him, it was then time to go. Because what did we have? A feeding frenzy. The cat was out the bag. People were then saying, a lot of people, probably what they had thought for a while. Now, in of itself, that's quite disgusting ultimately, because these reporters, these purveyors of the news and all that is right and righteous, who've preached for months and years and said everything was fine when quite patently it wasn't, then they decide that it's not. Based on one debate, the clues were there already. And I think that is a sad indictment of the media. But it's not just in this, I would hasten to add. And I hope they feel suitably chastised, although probably they won't. So for whatever reason, a tipping point, something happened, probably the debate, but other people then said, well, hey, we can't disguise it any longer. We better look like we're actually reporting something that's factual just now instead of making things up. Then we have to say what we see. And yeah, we see someone who, given, what is it, how many million people, 330 in the US, and a lot of really smart people, a lot of extremely clever, on the ball, gifted, articulate people, and this is what you have. It just didn't seem right. And as I say, I don't mean to be offensive to the person at all, not remotely. The 81-year-old neighbour, again, it ticks every box for being somebody who's in great shape for 81. But as the leader of that country, no, not at all. Mentally or physically, it would seem. And again, portraying that level of frailty and weakness is, whether you and I like it or not a good look out there. It's not a good look with the eyes that are on a nation like the US, and nations have eyes on each other as well. Can you think of any other nation out there off the top of your head where a leader currently is looking that weak? Maybe you can, I can't. And if they are that weak, they're hiding it well. And so when that happened, I thought it before, but when that happened, when that bubble burst, this was when I said, Biden has got to go, because it's only going to get worse. Everything he does will be scrutinized, and everything he does will be run through a confirmation bias filter. And what that means is that a normal slip up that anyone else could have made, and I make a lot, like with my recent live when the camera fell off the stand and dropping a pen 2 or 3 minutes ago. But I'm not under that level of scrutiny, and I don't have that label on me. And so it probably will be okay. But if he'd done the same thing, if this was Joe, the camera falls off. Well, I didn't actually touch it, it just fell off. So you might believe me, but if he says that, well, the camera fell off, well, we're now looking at him through that lens of, you didn't seem to be very competent at all, mate. And you dropped a pen in the middle of that. What's going on? And it was that I thought was untenable for him and his family. And whether it's true or not, there seem to be some suggestions that behind the scenes, people were clinging on to power. Obviously, Joe looked like it was, but I don't know whether that was him. Some people said that allegedly Dr. Jill Biden liked the trappings of power and was encouraging him. I've no idea. She certainly didn't do him, or probably herself, any favors when she talked to him when he finished the debate like he was some kind of school child. And that was embarrassing. And that just, again, how could you think that was a good look, either of you, at all? And whether that was going on or not, I don't know. But also that adds to the rumors and makes things even more untenable. When you get to that point, you've got to go. It just wasn't going to work. And I think that he rallied to a degree at the NATO summit, but he still made some gaffes. What was it, President Putin and all that sort of stuff. And unfortunately for him, it's a little bit like us saying, don't think of a black cat, or you meet someone and let's imagine that they are, I'm trying to think of something that's not offensive, which is very difficult these days. Let's say that they're wearing a hat, and the hat is bright red, white polka dots on it, and it just doesn't suit this individual. And it doesn't suit them, and you're a friend, but you don't want to offend them. And you say to yourself, don't mention the hat. And then what do? You say, and anyway, and that hat, why did you mention the hat? Oh, no reason. No, you mentioned it for a reason. Don't mention a black cat. Don't think about a black cat. You do not think about a black cat. You think about a black cat. And it's that kind of thing. So this is what I think he's done. And it is a mistake that can be made. And it's easy to judge that stuff when you maybe don't speak in public. Speaking in public it can be a stressful thing. Speaking in public can cause our perception to change and the way we process language to change. And it is easy to make these slip-ups and not even realize that you've made them. And probably everyone who's made a speech at some point has slipped up and said the wrong thing. But that was the issue. He'd already had these series of gaffes that, of course, they're blown up, they're identified, the press will edit them. I chopped out a couple myself to show them, although I actually actually put in quite a lot of areas in his work around NATO that were okay to highlight that it wasn't all bad, essentially saying, look, it's not all bad, but also look at what the press are showing. What are they focusing on? Things they'd already done years ago, but swept under the carpet. And that is the travesty. And I think I'd said before as well that I'm so sorry, Joe, this should all have been handled differently. And I have some compassion for him, because I want to have compassion to him as a human, even though I don't know him and I'm no particular fan. But I want to have compassion to him as a human, because I don't think that was right. I don't think that he should have been put in the position that he's now had to find himself in, because it should have been addressed a while back, a long while back. And so now he got COVID, and maybe they were looking to be the off ramp, and maybe that wasn't enough, and maybe he's been fighting behind the scenes to stay on, but it was just lost. And I think, I don't know what it tells us ultimately about Joe Biden. History will judge that. At least that's the phrase I hear. Don't quite know what it means. Who is history? Who is this person? But I guess what they'll write in the future, through perhaps a more measured lens, will look at Joe maybe more fondly or maybe less fondly. I don't know. But what I think right now, it has been the case, is this has damaged the country, the US, and indeed you could argue the West. What are we doing? What is this all about? How was this not addressed already? How is it that this guy is now stepping down? Maybe COVID or whatever it is that he has will be used as an excuse. Maybe not. Maybe that headline's already out and I haven't. But the headline I have seen is that he's endorsing Kamala Harris. And then this is the other issue. She's an unknown quantity in many ways. Unfortunately for her, she doesn't poll well, and there's not a lot of confidence around her. I would like to think she's given the benefit of the doubt. In terms of background and qualifications, she looks like she should be competent in the role, but I don't know how much of the presidential stuff she's done. The VP's role is quite distinctly different, as I understand it. So we haven't seen that. And maybe she will rise to the task, but maybe she should have been doing things or been put in positions to shadow this stuff, to get ready for it, to find herself in a space and a place where she was more up to speed, because I certainly don't think she's up to speed from what I've seen. Maybe that's frantically happening right now. And as I've also said before, just because democracy is important, there's no sort of partisanship or bias from me. Because it is important, I think that Kamala, or whoever it is, it has to be the best candidate for a debate and a contest to be as useful as possible. And I think that the hyperbole, the overblown rhetoric, the misinformation, all that has got to be dialed down. What the US deserves are two people to debate properly, to debate with some, let's say, logic, with some actual facts, and with some compelling arguments that are based in fact, as that word I've used already, and also that are based or at their core is a sound and reasoned argument for what is being put forward. More and more and more, what we're seeing, you can see the temperature in the US is going way up. It's going way up in many countries politically, the divisions everywhere. What we're seeing is more a fallback on, as what some people call the sort of dog whistle approach, where they will say, well, let's just use a phrase that will rile that group, rile them to cheer and think this is wonderful, or rile them to get them annoyed for whatever reason. And politicians understand emotions, they understand how to access them, they understand what they're doing. well, they should understand, but they do, but often it is misused. So yes, it's not wrong to use emotions. Emotions are part and parcel of how we understand what we feel about a politician, a party, a proposal, etc. That's intertwined with logic, so that it is important. But when all of it is just pure emotion with no backup, with no substance, then we're in trouble. And the US deserves better. And the US also deserves and should be leading the way. This country, as I've said, filled with so many smart, incredible, gifted people, and in many ways built on just such an astounding set of principles, inspiring principles. It's not all right these days, of course. It's not what I'm saying, but the intention is there. And with some adjustment, maybe it would need to be some big adjustments, I think that what we could see is the right contest in place. Now, for the moment, it is limited by the fact that I'm presuming that it's going to be Trump on one hand, because I think he's now in place as the candidate. He is the Republicans' candidate. He's running. That's been confirmed. And is it going to be Kamala? It's obviously not Joe, or is it someone else? And as I was saying, if it is Kamala, then she's got to go in debating. And remember, I'm not taking sides. I'm taking the side here of we need to get a couple of people who will debate. And you may be saying to yourself, but Trump doesn't do that. Well, I hope he does. I hope he sees the opportunity to lower the temperature. I hope everyone does. And I hope he sees the opportunity to argue with logic, because that's what's required. The country deserve it. The West deserves it. We need to know what these arguments truly are, and to call out the misinformation. I know people say Trump does that, but this is, look at what's not been displayed from the Biden camp. This is not overnight. So there's a huge amount, in my opinion, subterfuge has gone on there for whatever reason. And I don't think there is a good reason. I think that was wrong. I think that things are being going on behind the scenes that as I say, you or I possibly cannot appreciate. But now could be a good time to at least do a bit of a mini reset on that, and just consider how these debates should be conducted, in what way would it be conducive to the population ultimately understanding what these individuals in these parties really do stand for. What are the ramifications? So less of the sound bites, less of the argumentative language, longer periods of time, perhaps longer debates. And people say, oh no, but it needs to be snappy, and they can't debate for too long. If they can't debate for too long, what are they doing in the race? And don't tell me that people can't listen to longer conversations. Look at podcasts. How long are many podcasts these days? And how long, for what duration do people listen and watch them? Hours at times, some of the bigger podcasts, because people can do it. And if a debate is structured in a way that is interesting, because politics is innately not interesting to a lot of people, but I think that's because they don't understand, and certainly I often don't understand, the importance of what's being said. So let's have it explained in a way that's more like a podcast. And maybe that should be the format. Relax, sit back, get the headphones on, the microphone, have a cigar or whatever it is they do, and cup of coffee, glass of wine, and let's just hear this for 4 hours. Yes, I know I'm probably getting into fantastical thinking, but I think that's better than what we get, and the US is not alone with that. So I'd calm it down, and I would try and find some way to leverage whoever these candidates are. Well, we know one, whoever is going to be debating Trump, to literally getting to a place where they can articulate what they mean. And the sniping backwards and forwards, that was also a feature of Trump and Biden. You know, I mean, it was pathetic ultimately. It was kind of funny in one way. You know, your handicap, my handicap's 6, you couldn't do this. And I mean, it's amusing, and I don't mind humor. I love humor. I think humor is important. But come on, you know, what are you doing? And how come you've got so much time to play golf anyway? Shouldn't you be doing things that require a bit of homework? And okay, Trump isn't president right now, so he's got an excuse. But yeah, I just think things need to be calmed down. I think Joe should have gone a while back for his good and for the country's good. I think that the unedifying spectacle of the part of the media not saying anything and then suddenly jumping on him is disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Who are these people and what do they get paid for? And what must it be like to work in such a culture? So if people really want the voters to engage, and if we really believe in democracy, then if it's Kamala or whomsoever, then I really hope that they're up to the job, and I hope that Mr. Trump is up to the job as well and can calm down some of the more colourful language, and also that his opponent in those debates, whoever they may be, also calms things down, and we get something which really honours what the essence of the US is meant to be, was meant to be, because this, what we're seeing so far, absolutely isn't. Anyway, I'm glad for Joe's sake that he's stepped down from that race, and I'm also glad for the country's sake that he's stepped down, and I'm also glad for the sake of the West that he's stepped down. And as I said, nothing personal to Joe Biden. It just should have happened a while back. I wasn't the only person who said it, but the thought that he would continue in his mind is interesting, and also the people around him thought that he should continue, at least some of them, is also interesting. Who's in these jobs? What are they thinking? Anyway, I better go. I'll leave you to your evening. I hope you found that of some interest. I think I switch it off here. Don't want to drop it a second time. Okay, for the moment from me, bye for now.